Hello and welcome to Positive Fandom. I'm your host, Rrr Mmmm. Today we're joined with the Cinemike here, who is going to be doing a wonderful Oscar preview series with me here. And the Cinemike, this was your idea to do the Oscar previews.
Yeah.
Why did you want to do an Oscar preview show?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm a huge fan of the Oscars ever since I was in high school. I'm obsessed, with everything about it. Like, I study the history, all the statistics. And of course, I'm a movie fan. So, of course, I love the Oscars. And, second, I think there's a lot of interesting things to discuss about this year's race. And, there are a lot of great contenders in great films that are in contention. So it should be a fun discussion. And I think this year is going to be one of the most competitive years in some categories, even though, there might be some front runners and stuff. But I think a lot of the films, that are nominated this year are competitive. So yeah, it's going to be interesting for sure.
It's definitely going to be interesting. This is truly a very unique year. One thing that I wanted to say about it is that it seems like it's one of the first years where we have these, I wouldn't call them, I guess maybe they are new rules when it comes to the Oscars. And I'm not quite sure whether I'm saying this correctly. Are there new rules to how movies and, let's say categories, an individual can be nominated in this particular awards, Cinemike?
There are no new rules, but this year is very different in terms of the circumstance because, first of all, this is the first year in a decade where the Best Picture has a fixed 10 nominees. Second, we're still in the middle of the pandemic, so the campaigning and all that stuff is different. Some are done virtual, there are in person campaigning that are being done. And since we're still in the pandemic, they are still allowing streaming only or VOD only films to compete. And so yeah, it's just the circumstance this year is still different than the normal. And also I think one thing that is affecting this year's race is that a lot of these events and awards were pushed because of the Omicron. Like example, the Critics' Choice, they were supposed to happen like last month, but then they moved it to March because of the Omicron variant. So it is affecting the race because it's hard to point out which movies do the people love, all that stuff. So yeah, it's really different this year because of all these circumstances around it, especially with the pandemic.
Yeah, it certainly is. And, what I was going to say is it certainly is a very unique year. We're seeing things that have never happened before. And adjusting to all of this has taken a bit of energy, mental energy, honestly, just to try to, get around everything, because there is kind of a lot going on with it and it has changed things. One thing I was going to say is that for me, it has changed my perception of how I take my approach to, looking at movies from a critical point of view. I am actually more open to giving films a chance. So, while I think prior to this, it felt, as if that wasn't something that I absolutely had to do because of perhaps the climate of how films were being made. But now it almost feels like to get a film made, it seems almost, or at least feels like it's such an effort and such an impossibility that when it does get made, it almost deserves a look. And Cinemike, I don't know about you, but you're right. I do agree with you about the streaming of films, being able to see more films than I've ever seen before. But the other thing that's happened for me over the past few years is just being able to see some of these fantastic, film, what is it called? Film festivals at home for the first time ever. And that's never happened for me before, where I can, sort of purchase a pass to, like Sundance, for example, or to, the Tribeca Film Festival here in New York. And I can watch as many films as I want to in many cases. And that's just never happened before. So, over the past 2 years, I think I've seen more films that are I guess, previewing or being, newly released than I've ever seen in my entire life, just because of the convenience of having it, right there in my home. So you make a really good point about that. And I think that there are going to be films that will debut that way, from now on more often. And, thank goodness we have the streaming services. Because can you imagine if we didn't have those streaming services during this entire thing? I mean, would it not be such a different experience for all of us?
Yeah, for sure. And you're right. Streaming help a lot because a lot of these contenders, you can watch them on streaming, whether it's Netflix or Apple or in VOD. So yeah, the visibility is certainly there.
It certainly is. And I was going to say that, so this is very exciting Oscar season for me. I'm not quite sure about last year. And I think that the adjustment period for last year did, divert a lot of attention away from the awards in the way that they normally would have been done. But this year feels quite back on track for me. How about for you?
Yeah, last year I still followed the Oscars, and I'm glad that it still happened. The Oscars last year, despite the it has the worst circumstance because everything is virtual, but then they still made a great thing out of it, and there were still great winners. Like last year, I love that like Anthony Hopkins won for The Father, which I think he gave his best performance of his career in that film, and I also love that example in Judas and the Black Messiah with Daniel Kaluuya, who won supporting actor. I think he is one of the best winners in that category in the past 10 years. So yeah, even though despite the circumstance of the Oscars last year, there were a lot of great winners there.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That's an extremely good point. And I'm so glad you said that. I would like to start off with the picture Belfast. The film is set in the late 60s in Ireland, right at the beginning of the Troubles, which is, unfortunately this period of time in Ireland where there was a lot of fighting, due to a number of different reasons. But one of the reasons obviously had to do with, religion, and it caused quite a lot of distress and discomfort for the people there. I saw the film, of course, via streaming. And I thought that the story was poignant and moving. What did you think about Belfast?
I like the film a lot too. Belfast, directed by Kenneth Branagh. It has a great cast with Jamie Dornan, Karen Hines, if I'm pronouncing his name right, Judi Dench, Catriona Balfe, and Jude Hill, who plays the young kid, who's basically like the young Kenneth Branagh. I like the film a lot. It's very heartwarming. It's a heartwarming film. It's, you know, as you said, it's poignant. It's I great performances. I like I love the beginning of the film because when they showed the beginning of the troubles, with all the mob destroying the cars, and yeah, that scene, that was a heart wrenching moment. I thought, like I can't believe that it happened. It's one of those moments where I was just in shock that it happened, and there are people who would do those things, and it became this cathartic experience for this family if they should still stay or in there in Belfast, which has been their home for several years. You know, it's where they were born, and you know, it's their home. But then there's the troubles that would, you know, make life more challenging if they stay more. So they're contemplating if they should just move. So yeah, it's a great film. And I also, as I said, I love the performance of the cast. Jude Hill, he is, I think he's a first time actor here, and it's impressive. I also love Jamie Dornan's performance. I wish he had more nominations, to be honest, because I thought he was great here. And you know, Catriona Balfe, I also love her performance. Although she didn't get nominated this year, despite that she got nominated like anywhere except the Oscars. I thought she was great here, especially in that scene in the middle, in the bus. That moment, like she was great. And Judi Dench, of course, she's Judi Dench, so she's great to see. Phil and Karen Hines, who shines in the some of the moments that he's in. So yeah, I love it. It's a great film for sure.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on a lot of what you said. You know, of course, it's a set in 1969 in Belfast, and it is sort of an autobiographical story of Kenneth Branagh, who we've all loved for so many years in so many films. Yeah. You know, it seems like he had a pretty idyllic life as a young child, and then to have such a drastic change of events happen just even right on your street. You know, it was very touching when his grandfather, played by Kieran Hines, tells him that, well, you know, everybody knows you. You know, this is where this is, everybody knows you from here in Belfast, you know. And his mother kind of hugging him in the doorway, terrified about what's going on. It is quite shocking to see something like that happen right at your doorstep. You know, because clearly this, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's a very chilling sequence, that entire thing in the beginning.
Yeah, it really is. You know, and I also think that, you know, it is quite true where you may have a family member who has a job and they want to move away, and, you know, that moving away to another country, moving away to another neighborhood can be somewhat traumatic, but then moving to another country, you know, it truly is something that's completely different, isn't it? You know, you're not even talking, a lot of times you won't even be in the same culture, and now you're kind of moving to another country. Thank goodness the country they were moving to, they spoke the same language, but even so, you know, that would have been quite a difference of the type of lifestyle and everything they've built in their hometown, you know, is just going to be so dramatically different. And I can understand wanting to stay in your own country, and you don't want to lose all that you've built up there, and the history and traditions, and they're very, very happy there. You know, so I think that this is one of the very interesting things, and I think people will say or ask questions, why did you leave? You know, what were the circumstances? And this is a very painful experience. This was not a joyful situation, but I think it needed to be told because, you know, believe it or not, there are a lot of people who are unaware of what the troubles were, and that it even happened, and the effect that it's had over the country. Yeah. And I just think that to do this, for at least for Kenneth Branagh, to put himself in this position where he is so incredibly vulnerable at a very sensitive topic, I'm sure. You know, to discuss was something that he felt he had to do, but also it's a story for so many others who have experienced this type of thing, not just in Belfast, but in their own countries. Yeah. You are absolutely right about the acting. I thought it was brilliant. And what did you think about the fact that the movie was in black and white?
Regarding the black and white cinematography here, to be honest, there were some moments that made me question that decision, because like there was one moment when the kid caught his parents arguing. Like I didn't like how that moment was shot, and made me think that should it be in black and white? But then at the end, I understood Kenneth Branagh's decision to tell it in black and white, because you know it's a memory from the past. So I understand the creative decision to make the film black and white, even though honestly the cinematography itself wasn't as great as I wish. Like I wish there was more. It was lit well, but yeah, that is my, I guess, a nitpick about the film, if there's any.
Yes, it certainly did have a different feel. I guess perhaps they were trying to bring you back to that time period. And after a while, I hardly even noticed it was in black and white, to be honest with you, Cinemike. After a while, I'd forgotten that it was in black and white. And, you know, I think that the deliverance of what they were trying to achieve really just was it felt almost as if they wanted to remove a lot of distractions and focus on this story that really was quite a traumatic and heartbreaking situation. You know, so my overall impression of it was very, very good. I thought that the screenplay was okay, but clearly this story has a lot of cultural significance, and you know, I could see how Kenneth Branagh you know, would want to share this part of it. If you had to rate this film, if I had to rate this film out of, let's say, out of a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10, you know, I would give it an 8. How would you rate this film, the Cinemike? What rating would you give it?
Same with you. I'm also going to give it 8 out of 10.
Yeah, it certainly is. It certainly is. You know, an incredible representation of a time that must have been just so harrowing for this family. And I think that was this the first movie that Kenneth Branagh was involved in? Has he produced other films, or do you know offhand? I don't know offhand, but
I'm not sure about that, but I know that it's the first film that Kenneth Branagh both wrote and directed since in a long time. Like it's been a long time since Kenneth Branagh directed the movie that he also wrote. That right. I know that it's
no, I understand what you're saying. And that's good to know. And thank you for mentioning that. But you know, so I think that Judi Dench, who I think it could be a contender for it, but I personally don't see her winning an award for this one. Do I think it's going to win Best Picture? I'm not sure. Let's get through the rest of let's get through the rest of these wonderful films that are on this list. Let's go to the next film that I have down, and the film is called Coda. And Coda is a movie about a family of hearing impaired individuals. And, you know, I think that it's very poignant to show their story. Here they are, and they run a business. They live in the Northeast, I believe. This video is a little choppy, but maybe I can find a better video. It's a story about a family, and one of the children in the family, it's set in modern times, one of the children in the family is not hearing impaired, and it's an Apple film. And it turns out that she, in addition to not being hearing impaired, she has this incredible talent. Yeah. And one thing for me that stood out about this film is that Mandy Maitland is in it. And I remember seeing her for so many years in so many films, and especially Children of a Lesser God, I think is the one she might have been in.
Yeah, she won an Oscar for that.
Yes. And so this film, I think, really does explore some wonderful themes that we haven't seen for a while. What were your impressions of the film?
I love this film. It's actually one of my, like, it, you know, if I have my top 10 favorite films of 2021, Coda is certainly in the top 10. I love this film so much. It's just a heartwarming story that showed you, I mean, it reminds me of what Rob always says at the end, and at the end of his show. Every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear, and all you gotta do is listen. I think Coda is a great example of that line, because we see a story of this family in which only one of them is here, who can hear, and because of that, she basically became their translator, their ASL translator, when they have to communicate with the others. And the dilemma here is she is a great singer, and she wants to be in like a music college. And I just love how they explored that. You know, it's about family, it's about love. Great performances as well by the cast. Emilia Jones, who plays the lead actress, she was great. And Marley Matlin, of course, is great. Troy Kotsur is nominated for supporting actor. He was fantastic. So yeah, I just love this film so much. It really hits you. And I guess what's impressive about Coda is that last year it was shown at the Sundance Film Festival, and then Apple acquired it for like $25 million, which is the highest of all time in Sundance record. And then they released it last August. And when I watched it back in August, I said, this could be a Best Picture contender. Although I'm not sure during that time if it can, because it's a small film. I'm not sure if the Academy will recognize this more. And I'm glad that it did, because it's just a great film. I don't know how to describe it, because it just hit the feels, all that stuff. So yeah, I just love this film.
Yeah, I agree with you on all those points. You know, the lead character, the daughter, wants to be, do the performing arts. Yeah. You know, which I think is very interesting, seeing her trying to explain to her family and how important this is to her. And, you know, the fact that they can't necessarily hear her performance, you know, is quite a situation for her. And how much they depend on her. You know, she's sort of their connection to the hearing world often. And she finds herself in this dilemma where she has to kind of make a choice as to whether she's going to follow her dreams or, take a different path. And so I think that this is truly one of a beautifully told story. The performances are amazing. And it is very interesting to see this story from point of view of from people who do have an audio impairment and someone who doesn't. It's a loving family, and I think it's a film that could appeal to anybody, which is something that I can't say for every film, that it's family friendly. So I definitely have to say it has that going for it. I also gave this film an 8 out of 10. What were your thoughts, the Cinemike? What would you give this film if you had to rate it?
I would give it a 9 out of 10. I think it's just a great film overall that tells the story that most of us wouldn't thought of. I thought they did it incredibly well, telling this story and use the power of visuals in cinema to express this story very well.
How big is this? Oops, sorry. I agree with you 100%. I think that there is just such an incredible, poignant, touching story told here. And it was nice to hear or even to see something like that in cinema. So I was really happy that it was made and that we had the opportunity to see something like this, that it was acquired at Sundance, is just a bonus. So I think it might be a contender. But as I said, I'm going to wait before I go ahead and comment on it. And let's go to the next film, which I have up here, called Don't Look Up. I don't know about you, but I absolutely love this film. I thought that it was one of the most entertaining films I've seen in a long time. And, the actors, Leonardo DiCaprio and the roster of actors goes without saying, their prior performances and their ability to convey the message. But I think overall, for a film that was meant to, with a statement about, let's say, the environment or just even other views, it was really entertaining to watch. It was fun. What do you think about it, the Cinemike?
Don't Look Up might be the most polarizing film of 2021. It has mixed reviews for sure, and it also divided, critics. Although audience love the film more, if you look at the audience score and on the social media responses, I think the audience loved the film more than the critics. I loved the film too. I thought it spoke well about the society that we are living in right now. I do understand the flaws that the people are pointing out. It's not a perfect film for sure. There's a bit of a messiness in it, but I do think that the film indeed spoke of the society that we are living in right now. It spoke of the times where we are right now, that we just don't want to admit that it is how we respond when it comes to an environmental crisis, that we're not very attentive to it, both the public and mostly the government, and they will only do it if it will benefit their image and their career. So yeah, and of course it has a star-studded cast: Leonardo DiCaprio, Jennifer Lawrence, Kate Blanchett, Meryl Streep, and Ariana Grande. So it has a great ensemble for sure. One of the most star-studded casts ever, I think. And yes, it spoke about climate change. It's an allegory about climate change, but at the same time, it's also a funny and entertaining film that is legit with all the jokes. And yeah, I enjoyed it a while more than most people did, I think.
Yeah, I truly understood that it did have a message, but I just thought it was funny. There were a lot of funny puns and jokes in it, and
Yeah,
poking fun at
and
different things.
it has a great recurring joke with Jennifer Lawrence talking about why the general charged her with the snacks in the White House. So yeah,
Yeah,
I love that recurring joke that happened all throughout the film, where she keeps on mentioning and wondering why she was charged for those snacks. Yeah,
there were
I
a lot
love
of moments like this, and it certainly was entertaining. Uh, I think the performances were just so great. I don't know whether anybody's been nominated for any of these performances. It almost for me, and I appreciate their performances. I don't know if they've been nominated, but for me, the
no.
film just alone, just the film alone, the building of this film, the way it was built and kind of arranged and edited was just so much fun to watch. I mean, it must have been so much of an effort to put all of this stuff together.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think it reflects all of the information, the too much information that we have nowadays that we have to deal with on an everyday basis. The information overload, so to speak, and so much more, that that it pertains to. So it stars also Mark Rylance, and I'm a huge fan of his, from Wolf Hall and a number of other films, that he's done, especially Bridge of Spies. I really love him as an actor. Obviously, it does have some sort of cultural significance and current relevance, but I think it truly was something that looked at just how you could orchestrate a film to make the focus on something that might be considered very serious, but also something that's supposed to be entertaining and make you laugh at a lot of times. I gave it a 10 out of 10 because I just kept laughing through the whole thing. And I thought it was very entertaining. And I think they did a good job of putting it together so that it made sense, so that it was almost like a story that you were watching on the news. What grade would you give Don't Look Up?
I'll give it an 8.5 out of 10.
Excellent, excellent. All right. Let's go to our next film. Let me just cue it up here. The next film, I actually got a chance to see part of this film, but I was unable to see the film in its entirety, and I was very upset about this. The film is called Drive My Car.
Yes.
And
I also have not seen the film yet, but I am excited to watch it now that it's in contention.
Oh yes. Yeah. I've heard nothing but good things about the let's say the entirety of the film, and I think that the film itself certainly does have a different approach. It is an independent film, and let me just pull it up here, and let's take a look at this trailer. And I believe I saw it featured in a film festival. Yeah, okay, it was here. It might have been the Toronto Film Festival. And here he is, kind of building this relationship with someone. And perhaps it's something that's, he wasn't ready for. But, life goes on, and it does look really good. Do you know anything about the actors who are in this film, and what was your impressions of what you've heard about the film so far, the Cinemike?
Drive My Car has a very interesting story this award season, because it's one of those films that was like, it was more of a critic's favorite early on. I didn't think that it would have a shot to get recognized by the Academy early on. And then it started to win a lot of critics awards. Like, it won Best Picture at the LA Film Critics. The New York Film Critics also awarded Best Picture. And and a lot of critics like awards. It's starting to win a lot of these critics awards, and I'm like, wow, it's I have never heard of this film until I read in the news that it's been winning all these critics awards. And and the impressive thing about Drive My Car getting not only Best Picture but also Director, Adapted Screenplay, and of course International Feature Film as Japan's representative is that it came from a U.S. distributor named Janus Films, which is not a recognizable film distribution company, and none of their films has ever get major recognition at the Oscars. So good for the good for them for making this film visible to the Academy and have them watch it and give it nominations and get recognized, which I think, like Drive My Car, is certainly an underdog film in this award season because it didn't come from a major studio or distributor. It came from a smaller niche distributor that most people are not familiar with, and now a lot of people will now surely watch it as soon as they can since it's getting nominated. And I've read like yesterday that in the US its domestic box office numbers now is in more than 1 million
Right.
after the Oscar nomination. So yeah, it's now getting more recognition now from everyone. So I'm interested to see how this will perform at the Oscars because it's one of those underdog, sleeper contenders that just rose out of nowhere, and now it could, yeah, and now it is one of the major contenders for Best Pictures. So yeah, it's a very impressive achievement for this film that not a lot of people are familiar with early on.
Yeah, and overall, the film is about pretty much being happy and dealing with a loss. One thing that stands out to me is, and I'm not going to say that this is true for every country, but the film is made in a country where they do revere someone who has passed away, and have a great deal of respect for people who have passed on. So, I think it's very interesting when he does suffer a loss, when the main character suffers a loss, how do you deal with that loss? And it might have actually struck a nerve with so many people, especially now, considering what, our world has been going through in regards to loss. I also think that the film is beautifully constructed. The editing is really nice, and it's even without obviously there's subtitles, but it is pretty easy to follow what's going on here. You can see how this main character is affected by this dramatic change in his life that he was not expecting. This loss that would not have been the normal time, the right time, let's say, for something like this to occur. It was quite shocking, and he's dealing with this. And it's not easy to deal with. It doesn't sort of go away in a day or two. It's completely changed, perhaps, his perception of what is it exactly that's going to make him happy again. And I think that that's a very interesting question that a lot of us have, and therefore it's incredibly relatable to so many people. The approach of how am I going to be happy when I've suffered a disappointment? So I think that that is very interesting concept, and I think that that's the appeal, or one of the appeals of the story for me. And I kind of look forward to seeing more movies like this where, we are kind of reflecting on how we as individuals deal with situations like this. I think we have a lot to learn from one another, and, he isn't doing it alone necessarily. Hopefully in the story, he's going to be able to rely on others and go on with his life. But I don't want to necessarily do too many spoilers, but you know, I gave this film, even though I have not seen it in its entirety, as I mentioned to you, what I did see of the film, yeah, I gave it a 9 out of 10. I think that it was really incredibly interesting and grabs your attention right away. And you want to know more about this person's life. And it is incredibly relatable. And the performances were wonderful from what I've seen so far in it. And I think that, you know, the recommendation for the nomination is not an accident. It really is a great film. So I'm hoping that I wouldn't be upset if it won at all, if it won Best Picture, honestly, the Cinemike. I would actually be happy.
If Parasite was able to do it, why not more international films? So I think it can, if the Academy would watch it, and yeah, it can. Why not? If Parasite has set that precedent that it could happen, so I think it can.
I sure hope so. You know, I know that that perhaps a lot of people may view it as something that is extraordinary, perhaps, but honestly, I think it might be one of the most touching films in the sequence of what's been nominated. And I think it was, I think, honestly, for a modern day film, it truly was just mesmerizing in its sincerity. So if that makes any sense. So I'm so excited for the film overall. And as I've said to you, I'm really hoping that it will go very far, not just in the awards process, but also in general after the award season is over. So the next film, Dune, this film almost needs no introduction, right?
Yeah.
What did you think of Dune overall?
I love it. I mean, Dune was one of my most anticipated films of last year, and you know, when I watched it, it definitely delivered my expectations. It's a beautifully made, well-crafted film that is indeed an improvement from David Lynch's adaptation back in the 80s. And this one, it's just a well-crafted, beautifully made science fiction epic from Denis Villeneuve, who is one of the best directors today. It also has a great ensemble cast, you know, with Timothée Chalamet, Rebecca Ferguson, who I think is the MVP of the film. Oscar Isaac, yeah, Josh Brolin, Zendaya, Jason Momoa, Javier Bardem, like incredible cast, and I think it will have a more incredible cast in the sequel, since they have to cast the role of, I forgot the name of the character, of the character that Sting played in the David Lynch. I forgot his name. Sorry, but yeah, I love this film. It's I can't explain how much this film is just awesome. It's yeah, I am out of words about Dune, because it's just a beautiful film, and all I can say is that I'm looking forward to the sequel.
Yeah, this film truly was a pleasure to get last year, and there was a lot of fanfare about it, and it felt really good to have this amount of fanfare in a film. And I wanted, you know, there was a lot of talk about the original screenplay or a screenplay that had different sequences in it, and for what we received in the film overall, it's just a masterpiece of cinematography and editing and, you know, direction. Everything about it was just
I think it will win a lot of those technical craft categories, whether it's cinematography or makeup or production design. or sound, or Hans Zimmer's score. I forgot to give a shout out. I think his score in Dune is one of his best. So yeah, I think it will win a lot of this craft technical categories, like Mad Max Fury Road a few years ago, or Lord of the Rings Return of the King. Like I think it will almost sweep all those below the line categories.
Yeah, it certainly will. It was not an easy film to make.
Yeah.
Perhaps the most difficult film to make in the year. There is maybe another one, but I'm not going to mention it. Maybe I'll mention it at the end of this, but which also ironically stars Zendaya. But the thing about it is that this film is based on the masterpiece work of Herbert, and you know, I think that anybody who endeavors to make a film like this incredibly difficult to pull off interpretation and adaptation of his work, you know, you have to be a genius to pull this off. This was truly maybe filmmaking at its best. While I am going to criticize the scenes that were chosen in the final cut, I certainly am not going to say that the film overall isn't impressive. This is one of the most impressive films that I saw last year. I wasn't that impressed with the actors' performances, but it doesn't really matter because the film itself, as a package, was so compelling, and it got its point across in such a majestic way. You know, it was impossible not to look at it in awe and in wonder of how they were able to really do this. And honestly, if I had to do something like this, I'd probably lose my mind. There's just so much in it. There's so many details, so many practical and special effects, so many things to consider about the lore of this incredible story, and the orders of magnitude and the perception in the film of where we see these sweeping groups of soldiers waiting to fight, or these giant, you know, vehicles that are harvesting the spice, and the effect of the spice over this this galaxy is truly conveyed in a very special way. And I have to give Villeneuve a triumph for this. This film is a 10 out of 10 for me. What did you think, the Cinemike?
I'll give it a 9.5 out of 10.
It certainly is up there. And for me, I wish, one thing, if I could change anything, I would say I wish I could have seen more Jason Momoa's character. Yeah. I think he could have really cut loose in this one, and his attributes as an actor could have been used to fruition here in a film where there seems to be sort of an arduous element and a physically demanding style of work here in this film. So, you know, I think that whatever films they have going forward are going to be equally as impressive with something like this. It's truly a triumph for Villeneuve. And I'm looking forward to the next one, and I'm sure as you are as well. I could just watch this trailer forever and ever and ever. So yes, Dune. It really was completely refreshing to see this film last year, especially since it didn't feel like we'd been getting very many films like this. The Cinemike. Yeah. It's almost like a dry spell. It's a bit ironic that the film is called Dune, but it felt like a dry spell in regards to sort of these blockbuster films. But we did actually get quite a few last year, and we can certainly have that discussion another time for that. So let's move on to the next film. A film where the lead actor is up. Oh, that's not a good... is that a decent looking trailer? Yes, it is. Okay. It's a film where the lead actor is up for an Academy Award for Best Actor. And I have to say, rightfully so, Will Smith, I think, is going to win it for this film. But that's not what we're discussing, the Cinemike. That's not what we're discussing. We're discussing the Best Picture category. And how could you not be you know, really be moved by this story of Venus and Serena Williams, who as tennis players in the United States have been, you know, grossly unrecognized in their contribution to sports and the popularity of tennis. What were your impressions of King Richard?
I love this film as well. Of course, we all know who Serena and Venus Williams are. They know that they are legends in tennis, but I think most of us don't know the story. And you know, we see that it was all because of their father, Richard Williams, who really like like I forgot if it was before they were born or when they were an infant, when Richard Williams already planning their career ahead. Like he had like a notebook or a diary or something where he was already planning their career, that they will be great tennis players. And yeah, he really pushed them, but at the same time he also loves them, no matter what. And the impressive thing about King Richard for me is that yes, it is one of those a typical sports biopic. You can say that it's a fair argument, but I think what makes it different from the other sports drama or any sports biopic is that it it's mostly in the end, because it didn't end with I think it's Venus, right, who had a match at the end of the film.
Yes.
like like I love that it didn't end with a triumphant victory with her, and the message is it's okay if even if you don't win, you just have to work hard more. And as we all know, like, even though she was defeated in that match, we all know what happened to her career after that. She became one of the biggest tennis players, tennis superstars around the world. And I love that it ended that way, which I think makes it a more unique sports drama, sports biopic from the others. I think that's making Richard stand out, the ending. And it's just a great story that most of us are definitely not familiar with, and I'm glad that they told it. And it's also great that Venus and Serena themselves are like the are one of are part of the executive producers of their films, so they had their stamp of approval on how they and their family was portrayed. And of course, great performances by everyone, especially Will Smith and Anjanu Alice, and 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 even someone like John Bernthal. He was also great. Or Tony Goldwyn in his little scenes, and of course the actresses who played Venus and Serena. So yeah, it's a great film overall, and it's definitely one of my top 10 from last year.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I ended up giving it a 10 out of 10. I felt that Will Smith definitely anchored this film. I don't think that I can't imagine the film without him. And if he were not in it, this film would have not have had the same realism and intensity that the role required, as well as the relationship and the chemistry that he has with his daughters and his wife are just unbelievable. I think that one of the very interesting things about this film is just showing their lives unaltered and free of distraction. Was really fantastic to do, because this is maybe one of the purest autobiographical films I've ever seen. You know, we know that this was what their life was like growing up, and that, you know, their parents cared very deeply for them to make sure that they had the best life that they had. And it's not without criticism, even self-criticism in the film. And the other thing that I was going to say is, while it does show a focus on, you know, their parents' determination to give them the best, it also shows two very talented tennis players, you know, who many people have said are, you know, Serena is the greatest tennis player of all time. They certainly did change the sport of tennis in regards to popularity. And even the time in the United States that tennis matches were broadcast, which normally would have been at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, they pushed it into prime time because there were so many people who wanted to see these young ladies play at the time. And hence, from that time, they've broken so many records, are fantastic players. I'm a tennis fan, so I've been watching tennis my whole life, and I have to say that they really are, you know, two young ladies whose talent expands beyond the tennis court. Their popularity also has expanded beyond the tennis court, and that doesn't always happen with every tennis player. Usually they become a champion and then people kind of forget about them, and most people cannot recognize the average tennis player unless you follow the sport. Most people don't know who these athletes are. They're more prone to know maybe the latest football player or rugby, or maybe even, you know, let's say some other, you know, more popular sports. But I think that this portrayal of what, let's say, the father went through was incredibly accurate. And, you know, it really did feel like you were stepping into their lives. This film is a grand slam to me. 10 out of 10. I really want Will Smith to win for Best Actor. What do you think, the Cinemike? Do you think Will Smith deserved Best Actor in this one?
Without going into more details, since we will do that in another, he is definitely the front runner to win this, and I'm also predicting that he will.
Yeah, we were really lucky to get this this film at this point, and I would say maybe it's his best performance, you know, of all time. For Will Smith.
I agree on that as well. I think it's best so far.
So, you know, congratulations to him, regardless of what happens, let's say, from this point going on. I do have to say that I thoroughly enjoyed his abilities, and I always knew he was a great actor, but you know, I think we were also lucky to see him in a role where he truly shined. So let me cue up the next one. It's kind of I try to do it with a better flow, but I'm losing my flow here. The next film is a film called Licorice Pizza, which the Cinemike, I've been hearing so much praise about this film, and I have been unable to see it, unfortunately.
I also haven't seen it yet, but I also heard so many great things about Licorice Pizza.
Yes, and I have a very good friend. Her name is Catherine Cook. She's a PGS member like you and I, and you've seen Catherine sometimes on our Zoom calls.
Yeah.
She's seen this film, and she liked it. And, you know, I value her recommendations very much. So, you know, here's this film that's come out. What have you heard about Licorice Pizza?
First of all, Licorice Pizza is from Paul Thomas Anderson, who is like one of the best directors right now that we have right now. He has been, you know, he has made a lot of great films in the past, like Boogie Nights, Magnolia, Punch Drunk Love, There Will Be Blood, The Master, Phantom Thread, and now he, you know, his latest work is Licorice Pizza, and it's been getting a lot of praises. The movie is nominated in 3 categories: Best Picture, Best Director, and Original Screenplay. And I've also keep hearing that the performances of the cast were praised, particularly Alana Haim, who we are seeing on the screen. Like, she is, even though she did not get nominated for an Oscar in the end for Best Actress, she won a lot of critics awards, Best Actress, you know, from the critic circles. She also got nominated for a Golden Globe and Critics' Choice and the BAFTA award. She got nominated in those 3 major awards. So, you know, once I finally get to see the film, I can't wait to see why people keep on praising Alana Haim. And if people are not familiar with her, she and her sister are have a group called Haim. They are musicians, and if I'm not mistaken, the story was, I think Paul Thomas Anderson directed one of their music videos, and then later on when he was prepping for Licorice Pizza, he emailed her the script and told her that he wants her to star in it. So he must have saw something in her when he was directing their music videos to say that I want you to star in my next film, which I think tells a lot. And then of course there's also Cooper Hoffman, who is the son of Philip Seymour Hoffman, and of course Philip Seymour Hoffman has worked with Paul Thomas Anderson a lot. So it's also like a full circle moment, like years after Philip Seymour Hoffman passed away, he cast his son now to star in this film, and then of course there's also Bradley Cooper, who I've also heard also getting a lot of praises for appearing for several minutes only, but he stood out according to the all the reactions. Then I think Sean Penn is also there, and Tom Waits. And so yeah, I am looking forward to see Licorice Pizza, and it's from Paul Thomas Anderson, so I'm definitely expecting that it will be a great film.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a coming of age film about falling in love in California, clearly in the 1970s.
Yeah.
And it really is looks fantastic. I have heard very impressive praise of almost all of the actors about the performances. For those of us who, have had similar experiences, I think there's a lot of very interesting, silly, cute, and endearing moments that happen in this film. And you're right about the Bradley Cooper performance I heard as well was very impressive. These two young adults are getting together and have life-changing experiences. And I think people are looking for stories like this. They want to kind of go back and think about all those wonderful times of what it was like to be alive, having those childhood experiences, if they were pleasant, are really something to cherish. And I think it definitely has mass appeal for anybody who loves coming of age films, anybody who loves a romance. I love romance. So for me, this film definitely hits a lot of marks. For example, seeing even the clothing, since would be considered, I guess, maybe not a costume drama, but a period piece. That era of time in especially in the United States was a very special time. And I think that the performances were just seemed so incredible. One of my friends said that the film was really incredibly well made, and truly was worthwhile seeing, one of the best films that they had seen last year. So honestly, I think that it is a contender. Now, I don't know whether it's going to win movie of the year, but it certainly is worth seeing. And it's hard to rank a film when you haven't seen it, but from what I've heard about it, I guess I would give it an 8 out of 10. It certainly looks like it's a well-made film, and the performances, as you said, for some of the actors who've been nominated for other awards were certainly well-deserved. So what do you think? Do you think it stands a chance in winning for Best Picture, the Cinemike?
It can, although I'm not sure if it will do, because it only received 3 nominations, which is why I'm not like entirely confident that it could stand a chance. But I think it can, because it's clear that, they gave it a director and screenplay nominations, so which are major categories. So it stands a chance since the film has both nominations.
Right, exactly. So the next film, which is Nightmare Alley, I've actually seen this film. Have you had a
Yeah.
chance to see this film as well?
Yeah, I did. I
All
did.
right. And what did you think of it?
I love that film maybe more than most people did because, like, looking at all the Nightmare Alley reactions, and not that it was divisive, but like, like, like they didn't call it as great as like Shape of Water or other Guillermo del Toro's works. But I love Nightmare Alley, this 2021 adaptation of Nightmare Alley, because of course Guillermo del Toro is known for directing films that has monsters or fantasy or supernatural or science fiction elements. This is his first ever film that are only about human beings. There's no any supernatural entity in it. It's just purely human beings. But and it's more of a noir film. And what impressed me the most about Nightmare Alley is that even though it's just about humans, it was still haunting to watch. Like especially the ending. Like I thought the ending was chilling. It's still like I still think about the ending even until now. Like it had a beautiful ending, and I also love it's also a beautifully made film. Like the production design, I love the carnival. Like I love the carnival set, and also great performances from the cast. It also has an all-star cast. Like Don't Look Up. Like it has Bradley Cooper, Kate Blanchett, Rooney Mara, Richard Jenkins, Toni Collette. Um,
And Ron Perlman, who's also
yeah, Ron
in Don't Look
Perlman,
Up.
yeah, and Ron Perlman and Willem Dafoe. I almost forgot who I thought was great as well. It has a great cast. I just love it. I think it's one of Guillermo del Toro's best films. It certainly lived up on my expectations, and it's just fascinating that he was also able to make a well made movies that are only about human beings and still found a way to make it as haunting, as scary, and as chilling as his other films that has monsters and fantasy and supernatural. So I think it's a great achievement from him.
Yeah, it really is. And, my interpretation of this film is that of, it's meant to, it was made and presented in a time when, the circus had a different meaning to it. And, ironically, there were all sorts of angles that not every performer, but some performers would play and entertain circus attendees. And, who doesn't like the person who can tell you what your future is about and speak to the dead and talk about seances? And the popularity of these things, it was incredibly popular at that time period. It is a period piece. And to capture the mysticism of it all, you needed a director like Del Toro. This is not an easy thing to recreate. This is not an easy time period to, have and create on a screen so that it's believable. Toni Collette's character, was sort of one of those foundational rock characters where, she sort of, trained and could help the Bradley Cooper character. And he, was the ultimate, manipulator in a sense, although he himself ends up getting manipulated. The storyline is not a surprise because it is a remake from I guess it was a 1940s version of Nightmare Alley with Tyrone Power. But the biggest point for me in this film is just the filming, the cinematography of it. And, just honestly, the shots that Del Toro did are absolutely spectacular. I think this film would look good in black and white or in color as we are experiencing it. Kate Blanchett did a wonderful job. And I love the costumes, and I think it'd be a contender. I don't think it was nominated in that category, but since Dune, I think, may win.
It's nominated.
I'm sorry?
It's actually nominated in costume.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yes.
Well, I guess it has to contend against Dune, right?
Yeah.
Perhaps it won't win against Dune, but it certainly deserved a nom because of the execution of this between... the costumes were everything in this. And if they were off, we wouldn't believe any of this, especially for a period piece. I think Del Toro definitely may have grown up seeing some of these acts somewhere and, had a fascination for it. And so recreating Nightmare Alley would be, something that he knew he could do. One other thing I was going to say is the desire for the characters to remove themselves from their origin, I think, is also very interesting. In the end, he still is who he was in the very beginning of the film. He hasn't necessarily improved himself, and that becomes apparent. You are right; it is a film noir film, and I think that the marketing for this film is very poor. I think a lot of people would see it and not know what this film is about. I mean, what did you think overall? How would you rate this film, the Cinemike?
I might give it a 9.5 out of 10 because I really love this film a lot.
Yeah, I gave it a 10 out of 10 because this is another film like Dune, very difficult to make, very difficult to convey. And it is a niche film like Dune. Not everybody knows what Dune is. Not everybody knows what Nightmare Alley is. And if you can relate this to a general audience to a point where it is appealing, then, as a director, as a producer, a cinematographer, a screenplay, you definitely have a special quality, and the production design as well. I would say was just so impressive. So for me, I think it's very interesting that he chose to focus on this film just at this particular time. This must have taken a long time for him to organize and get right, from a production quality overall. So it was a success for him, no matter what happens from this point. Del Toro seems to be able to recreate these amazing sort of stories for us, and truly just done with so much style. I just was really impressed with what he did. And so the next film, Cinemike, was one that's getting a lot of buzz. And the film is called The Power of the Dog. And it is a Jane Campion film. I've seen a few of her films, and she definitely has a different approach to her style when it comes to directing a feature film. And this film, have you seen The Power of the Dog?
Yes.
Okay, and what was your overall impressions of the film?
I like the film, although not like most critics did. I think, although I think it's a great film, beautifully directed by Jane Campion. That speaks about toxic masculinity, and some have also analyzed it as sexual repression because they keep on implying that Benedict Cumberbatch's character, I think his name is Phil Burbank. I think that's the name of his character. Like throughout the film, he keeps on mentioning about Bronco Henry, who is this character that we've never seen, that they kept on mentioning, and they hint that they might had a sexual relationship before it speaks about toxic masculinity because Benedict Cumberbatch's character keeps on poking fun at Cody Smith McPhee's character, uh, Peter. Um, and then and then they became close, and then something happened in the end. And I think it's a well-made film for sure, and I love that how they recreated like the 1920s. I think it's on Montana, the setting of the film, although they film it in New Zealand. And also great performances by the cast. Benedict Cumberbatch was great. Cody Smith McPhee, Jesse Plemons. My favorite performances of the film is actually Kirsten Dunst. I thought she was fantastic, um, and also great cinematography. It's definitely not for everyone, and I've been seeing mixed reactions from the audience side regarding this film. Like there are some who like it, there are some who didn't understand it or got bored by it, and I understand because it's a very it's one of those films that demand a lot of your attention. Like you have to stay, your eyes should be on the screen 100% when you watch this film because it's one of those films that demands your attention to see every detail and requires multiple viewings to fully appreciate and understand what Jane Campion was doing, what she was trying to say in this film, especially with the commentary on toxic masculinity. And although regarding Power of the Dog, I've been interested, like I've been really fascinated by the audience reaction because I've been seeing like comments like, why is Power of the Dog nominated? I didn't understand it, or I was bored by it. And I don't blame it by it because it's really not for everyone. It's it's an acquired taste for sure. Although for me, I think it's a great film, and it's definitely the front runner right now for Best Picture, especially receiving 12 nominations, which is very impressive because like nominations like of more than 10, they usually go to like a more like a science fiction film or a musical film or fantasy film. Those are the films that usually get more than 10 nominations. Then we see this Western drama that is not really an action-packed film. Like it's really more like a contemplative, Western drama set in 1920s Montana. It's impressive that they were able to get 12 nominations, even with this type of film. So it's the front runner right now for Best Picture, and I am curious to see how it will go with the Academy on Best Picture if it could eventually win, because like yes, it's the front runner, but what makes me pause right now to say that it is locked to win, because at the Oscars, the Best Picture is voted through a different voting system, unlike the rest of the categories. And while the rest of the categories are voted by, they by they just need to check the box of who they want to win and then submit the ballot. In Best Picture, the voters have to rank the films from 1 to 10, from their most favorite to least favorite. And I'm not sure if the entire Academy really appreciates the film, although the number of nominations shows that they do. So I'm curious to see how the Power of the Dog will perform, since it is the front runner for Best Picture, how it will perform on the rest of the season up to Oscars night. So I'm very interested to see.
Yeah. Well, I have to say that Benedict Cumberbatch very rarely gives a poor performance.
Yeah.
So no matter what he's in, he always does a stellar job. You know, in with a character, and we've seen him through the years portray so many characters. Um, you know, there was a lot of very interesting scenes in this movie, and I think that Jane Campion has made some great films in the past. I liked The Piano. A lot of people didn't like that film. I think she did a version of The Portrait of a Lady by Henry James,
Yes.
which was also one that was not greatly received, although I liked that film as well. Although the story that she chose was a story that many literature followers would say was somewhat of an incomplete story, meaning A Portrait of a Lady. So I think that this story might also be one of those stories that, might have missed the mark a little bit. While it was nominated in a lot of categories and maybe the contender and maybe the favorite for many of the people in the Academy, I didn't feel like this one was a favorite for me. And so while there was great effort into making this film, it didn't quite hit the mark for me. So I think that if you're a fan of Westerns, you may greatly appreciate this film. It was nice to go back to a simpler time and see the lifestyle on a ranch there. And, I think that she was able to create that. And I think, the production designers, everything, you felt like you were back at that time. So for me, some of the relationship parts were not as strong as they could have been, and
yes, I actually agree with that, especially with Jesse Plemons and Kirsten Dunst. I wish they set up their romance more at the beginning, which is why for me I wasn't as invested on their love story. Like, I wish I had more. Like, that is like my one major I guess a criticism about the film is that I wish the like how they fell in love at the beginning. I wish there was more of that.
Certainly, and I think that the character that Benedict Cumberbatch plays, and he does do a wonderful job in portraying the character, is too much of a mystery for too much of the film. I think that there's sort of a wonderful sequence of a reveal that is maybe too late in the sequence, and perhaps if we had gotten that impression from the beginning, we would have had a completely different film altogether, and the impact of it would have been much greater for my theater experience. So exactly as you said, where you have to kind of pay attention and watch it. That's difficult to see, in this film. I think a lot of people would end up giving up on it before, you find out at the end. And another film that does that for me, or at least had that feeling, was Spencer, the one with Kirsten
Stewart,
Stewart in it, where it was a similar situation. I'm a super fan of, if you can be, of Princess Diana. And I found that, you had to wait till maybe the last 5 minutes of the film to understand that. And sometimes I feel quite conflicted when I see a film that does that to an audience, because I don't think a film should have to necessarily do that. Of course, it's the director's choice. It's the writer's choice. It's the screenplay, choice. And I respect that as their professional choice. But in regards to entertainment value, sometimes the film can suffer for that reason. And so, unfortunately, I gave this a 6 out of 10 for a number of reasons, but the main reason is that their relationships just didn't come off as being believable. So while the intention of the film for me, I totally understood what they were trying to achieve, I don't think it achieved it in this film. Other than to show that perhaps the main character wasn't very nice. So I think they could have, worked on providing a more realistic environment for the Kirsten Dunst character as well, where she could have really shown more acting chops. She did. She showed quite a lot, but they even limited her ability to.
Yeah, I also agree with that. Like, I love Kirsten Dunst's performance. She's the MVP for me. But I also wish that there was more of those moments.
Yeah. And so, you know, it is what it is. You know, we go to see these films, and while it is true that it was important for the story to come across, we also do want to get entertained. And I think a lot of people might argue that, you know, The Piano may not have been an entertaining film. You know, it's kind of a sad film. And some of her other films may not have been happy stories, but even a sad story can go ahead and create more of a bond amongst the characters. An example of that for me would be Drive My Car, where clearly there was that bond that was created, and it was slow. It was not a super fast film. You had to stick with it, but it was able to create the impression of relationships that we kind of seek out and want to see. The characters seemed a little detached in The Power of the Dog for me. So I didn't give it a great accolade, but you know, let's see how the Academy feels about it. You know, and so you know, it may, but let's see. You know, we never know how these things go, right? The last film. We're on our last film.
Yeah.
West Side Story 2021. Oh my goodness. This film has had a lot of buzz about it, a lot of advertising, a lot of attention. You know, clearly they recreated a very nice version of the 1950s here. And while I can see the effort that was put in the film, and I'm very familiar with the story, I think everybody's very familiar with the story. I'd seen the original West Side Story that was put out a while ago. I felt like I wanted to see a newer version of it, meaning maybe something set in the 1980s, because there are so very few of us who even remember what the 60s, you know, who are alive now, who, you know, what was the 1960s like. And it is great to see, you know, 1960s New York. I understand what he's getting at, or let's say the late 50s. I understand that. I get that. You know, my mother grew up during that time period. She's still alive. But I think that if he had kind of reset this in the 1980s, I think that it could have been something that would have been even more spectacular than it came out. And I think that a real opportunity was missed in regards to that. That's just my personal feelings. It doesn't mean that the acting and the performance and the dancing, and like, it was a beautiful recreation of the era. But I was not as enthused about it as I would have liked to have been. What are your thoughts about West Side Story 2021?
Unfortunately, I still have not seen Steven Spielberg's West Side Story. Although I want to watch it, Steven Spielberg is my favorite director of all time. So yes, I will watch it. And I love I love West Side Story. I've seen the 1961 film, and I love the musical itself. It's one of the most iconic musicals of all time, for sure. And it has a lot of iconic songs. And, you know, for years, I guess a lot of us fans of Spielberg have been wanting to see him direct a musical after what he did in the opening of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, with that old Hollywood musical,
right?
Yeah, with Anything Goes at the beginning. So we've been wanting to see him direct a musical, and now there's West Side Story, which is a musical, which is a passion project for him for a long time now. He's been wanting to make his own adaptation of West Side Story. Now he finally did, and it's been getting a lot of great reviews, and I can't wait to see it once I have a chance, and I think what Steven Spielberg was doing here is a tall order, because he is making a new adaptation of a beloved musical. First of all, a musical that has been adapted to the big screen before in 1961, that won 10 Oscars, including Best Picture. And so that's a tall order for Steven Spielberg to do, and he did it, and he managed to make a well-received West Side Story film that is now also up for many Academy Award nominations. And I've been hearing a lot of great things about it from critics, and the standout in terms of the performances is Ariana DeBose, who plays Anita, who is the frontrunner for Best Supporting Actress, and of course she is following Rita Moreno's footsteps on that, who is in the movie as well. I love that Rita Moreno is in this movie playing I think her character's name is Valentina, who is like the version of Doc in this adaptation. So it's great that Rita Moreno is here, and she's still like active as I think she's more active as ever. I think when I look at Rita Moreno now, so I'm glad. And then of course it has Rachel Zegler, who is now the rising star in Hollywood, and she is set to be in Shazam 2, and then she will also star as Snow White in Disney's live action remake. So and West Side Story is her first movie, and it seems that she blew us away out of a gate. And yeah, I am looking forward to see this once I get the opportunity. And I just love that Steven Spielberg finally directed a musical, and I hope he will direct a musical that has never been adapted before.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I have to say that, this film it's nearly perfect. I mean, there's no doubt about it. He did a wonderful job. I certainly am not going to really, other than the fact that I think he could have updated using the 80s as a time period, and it still would have been, a bit retro. But perhaps, that was something he felt he didn't want to do. And I'm pretty sure he hadn't even considered that. I definitely would say I give it an 8 out of 10. But overall, my pick, at least who I think will win, is Don't Look Up for Best Picture. Now, what film do you think will win for Best Picture?
Wow, I've been struggling with that ever since the nomination announcement, because right now the front runner is The Power of the Dog, but as I've said, it's not yet a lock to win. Although it's been winning a lot of Best Picture awards from critics, it's also won the Golden Globe for Best Picture Drama, because in the Golden Globe they divided into drama and musical or comedy. In the Golden Globes, drama went to Power of the Dog, and musical or comedy went to West Side Story. So I think I'm still hesitant to say that it is locked to win because of the preferential voting system for Best Picture. Like, I'm not sure if the power of I'm not sure if a lot of the Academy members will rank it at the top, because some might rank it in the middle, or there might be members who would find it boring, so they will rank it below at the bottom. So I'm not sure, and the Best Picture race, because of this new voting system that has been happening for 10 years, it has created a lot of surprise winners. Like example, 2 years ago, like we were expecting 1917 to win, and then the winner was Parasite by the end. I think it won because of this voting system, because as it turns out, a lot of the members of the Academy rank Parasite somewhere in the top. It looks like. And then, it also happened with the La La Land Moonlight, because if we all remember, La La Land was the front runner, but Moonlight, and then same with Shape of Water. Like, I remember Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri was the front runner during that year, and then Shape of Water won. So this Best Picture race has created a lot of surprise winners, like out of not necessarily out of nowhere, but winners that are not necessarily front runners. I think the only recent example where it didn't happen was last year with Nomadland, because because Nomadland literally swept. But I can argue that during that year there was no really a good alternative that can win during that year. I think it really was Nomadland no matter what. But this year I am very interested, because if not The Power of the Dog, I can see Belfast winning, because it's a story that might have touched a lot of Academy members, because they might have experienced that on their youth, or similar situation of what. So they might have been touched by the story of Belfast. So a lot of them might rank it high. I can also see Coda win, because it is a heartwarming film. I can also see King Richard, because of similar reason. It's a feel-good movie. I mean, there are a lot of feel-good movies that are nominated this year, whether it's Coda or King Richard, or in some extent Belfast. I think it's you can also call it like a feel-good movie, even with its serious. So I think Licorice Pizza also has a chance. Also, according to the people here, it's also a feel-good movie, and feel-good movies I think would resonate to a lot and would rank it high. And I'm not sure though if West Side Story can win, because a lot of Academy might say that it's just a remake. We already gave Best Picture to the original. Why should we give it Best Picture again? So that's why I'm not sure if West Side Story could win Best Picture, because some might dismiss it as a remake. And yeah, so I'm not sure yet, to be honest. I'm still struggling right now. For right now, I'll say The Power of the Dog might win just because of this front runner status. But I can see films like Coda or King Richard or Licorice Pizza or Belfast win, because I think there are strong arguments that they could surprise by the end. Like, I can imagine Power of the Dog winning a lot of Best Picture, and then by the end there will be a surprise. I can imagine that scenario.
Well, I have to say, the contenders this year certainly are very exciting. And, it's a lot to think about when it comes to who's going to win. Thank you for joining me for this Best Picture review and prediction for the Oscars for 2022. And it's March 27th, I think, is when it's going to air.
Yes.
And, you and I certainly will be covering this, because we're going to be covering numerous categories for the Oscars going forward. Talking about films and our picks for who we think may or may not win. And to the Cinemike, where can people find you?
You can follow me on Twitter at the Cinemike, and you can also read my articles on epicstream.com.
Excellent. And as always, guys, you can find me here on Positive Fandom. On YouTube and on Twitch, it's one word, Positive Fandom, where I do reviews and live streams and more. On Monday nights, you can find me on Toxic Femininity with Lorena Creel, Nina Infinity, and Mandy Summers, as also with Cameron Pasha and Tom Connors. On Wednesdays and Thursdays, sometimes you can find me on the 1/6 Scale Man Network, either on Say What or Uncivilized Scoundrels. On Fridays in the afternoon, you can find me at Midnight's Edge in the morning, streaming with Tom and Andre and Cameron Pasha as well. And on Friday nights, you can usually find me on the Burnett Network, streaming with Robert Meyer Burnett on Midnight Meta. And on Sundays, you can catch my live show, my Sunday brunch show at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I do all the parlay in what's going on in entertainment. Guys, we also do our PGS All-Stars and PGS review shows on the Brr Network, so check those out. And guys, I do want to thank you for joining us for Episode 1, the Best Picture nominations for the Oscars. As I said, it was the Cinemike's idea, and I think it's a great idea. And we're going to continue doing this series, going through many categories until we get to the day of the Oscars. So it's very exciting to be doing this. The Cinemike, thank you so much for taking the time out to review these wonderful films. And for those of you who are out there watching, always remember to please be kind.